Oh, welcome everyone. If you were here an hour ago, you saw me on another panel. This one is the future fuel of shipping. I think we all know that global shipping is entering a decisive decade as new regulations and customer pressure accelerate the shift towards low carbon fuels. And we would really like to get, by the end of our 25 minutes, what a realistic fuel mix will look like in 2030s, and how far can hydrogen-derived options like methanol, ammonia, liquid hydrogen reshape the industry. So first I'll introduce our illustrious panel here. We have Nicolas Piro. He is the CEO of Air Liquide Africa, Middle East, Central, and South Asia. And next we have Takeo-san, Takeo Akamatsu. He's the General Manager of Green Innovation Business Unit, Plant, Project, Marine, and Aerospace at Itochu. Next we have the hardest name. We have Mark Gelenkirchen, and he's the Vice President of Business Development Middle East at Advario Star Energy. And we also have Anton Martinez Rodriguez. He is the CEO of Enegas Renewables. And finally, we have Jens Welsner, Infrastructure Managing Director at Prime Capital. So we're going to discuss a little bit of what kind of shipping fuels are available and what this team thinks about them. And maybe we'll start first with Nicolas. Could you give us some idea of how methanol, ammonia, liquid hydrogen, how do they compare in terms of scalability, safety, cost? How would you compare these different options for shipping?
Thank you, Alicia. Hello, everyone. Very happy, very honored to be here again after last year's successful events, and always good to share some insight from a company, Air Liquide, which is not a true energy company, but since we are involved with our molecules from hydrogen to ammonia to methanol and others, into the energy players and the transporters in general, I'm always happy to share our own experience. I was for many years in Asia. I'm now in this region, fantastic region, very diverse. And when I look at these three molecules you mentioned, from my perspective, I think it's just too early to put all my bets on one of them, if I can answer very shortly. If you look just at hydrogen itself, we see some part of it in gas, high pressure, because it's light, especially for planes or for mobility, heavy trucks. And liquid hydrogen for shipping is part of the equation. But like some of these molecules compared to traditional fuel, when you save on CO2 emission and others, of course you lose on density, which means the point is not only the cost and the supply chain for this type of new fuel of tomorrow, for the shipping lines, but when you look at shipping lines is whether you are going to reschedule those ships, right? How far can they go? When should they refill? Depending on ammonia, methanol, hydrogen. And to me, because I supply industrial people like petrochemical and steel and electronics, for us, hydrogen plays in energy, for example, found its place when you have links between fuel, could be ships or plane or trucks, and industry. So to me, and it's very key here in Abu Dhabi or in the Middle East, is when you have a port next to an industrial zone, you can really scale some of these molecules much better. Because if you have usage with ADNOC, with some steel makers next to the port, then you can start to bet on economy of scale or better technology on this molecule. And then, of course, ammonia is more chemical than hydrogen somehow. So you have different type of risk and challenges compared to methanol and hydrogen. Methanol, we see it moving because we have more and more technologies, even Air Liquide, on e-methanol, depending on type of CO2 you could bring with hydrogen to make methanol. So I still believe there will be a path there with methanol, but ammonia is probably more ready at the moment, and I will let my peers mention that better than myself. But I'm remaining quite agnostic between the three of them today, if I may say.
Okay, thank you. I guess the next question I'm going to ask Takeo. What infrastructure gaps do you think we have for ports and fuel suppliers? And which ones do we need to address first?
Okay, if talk about the infrastructure readiness for the multiple fuel, so we need, of course, we need a alternative fuel vessel. That is a starting point. So if talk about like ammonia, methanol, and so methanol case, we have a vessel and we have a engine, and but unfortunately, still the supply side, production is not ready yet, so at the scale. So that's why that is an issue. But in case of ammonia, still we're waiting for engine and vessel. So we're happy to say this year, 2026, we have a number of the vessel with ammonia engine is coming to the sea. So if assuming that positive result of demonstration, and we can say engine vessel for ammonia is ready. And the question is infrastructure. And we have an existing tank for ammonia, like Advario people. And but we don't have ammonia bunker barge. So Itochu ordered the world first bunker barge, delivering the 27. So therefore, we can say 27, 28, we have a certain number of bunker barge in the market. Then next bottleneck would be a tank. So today we have a tank at for existing market. But if we have increasing of demand, then we need the onshore tankage worldwide. So that's why demand first, then we have to prepare the infrastructure, bunker barge, floating tank, onshore tank. Then last bottleneck seems to be a production.
Okay, understood. Well, actually, Mark, I'm going to ask you both questions. I'd love to hear your viewpoints on what you think are the outstanding characteristics, either positive or negative, about the various options for shipping, sort of what Nicolas said, or your version, and then also what kind of infrastructure blocks are there for these items, these fuels?
Let me first start with an example. And I'm going to ask a question to the panelists here, just to make it a bit more alive. So I won't ask you, because you're far away and I can't see you. How many of these shirts fit in a container?
You asking me?
Oh, no.
I used to ask the guy with
I'm
those
after
shirts.
the three gentlemen. 4. How many shirts fit in a container in a TEU?
100,000.
20,000.
20,000.
Oh,
Approximately. How many containers fit on a very large container vessel? 20,000.
Yeah.
How many shirts are on a container vessel?
100,000.
If it's only loaded with shirts? 20,000 times 20,000 is 400 million. So I think it's very interesting to understand, also for the audience, if you transport these shirts from Shanghai to Rotterdam with methanol or ammonia instead of heavy fuel, the cost per shirt will be around $1 extra.
Yeah.
So that cost is very minimal. The cost for the shipping line, though, is a few million. I think that's something that we always have to keep in mind. It is a small amount for the end consumer, it's a large amount for the parties in the middle. And I think that is one of the reasons why it's all going so slow. Another thing, talking about infrastructure, is that I think we should all use the infrastructure that we have currently available, and I totally agree with you. We have tanks that carry gray ammonia. If it tomorrow carries green ammonia, we do not see the difference.
Yeah.
It's the same infrastructure. We have these tanks in ports. They can bunker a ship tomorrow. So we have to make sure that we use the infrastructure and the supply chain that is already currently available for blue or gray products. And we should not shy away of even mixing the products. Because even if you put gray and green and blue and yellow and black and brown ammonia in the same tank, we won't notice. We can use it and it becomes cheaper for everyone. But please always remember, it costs nothing to transport it in an environmental friendly way.
I think it's $1 for a pair of jeans too. So really not a lot for
not
the
$1 for a pair of
consumer.
jeans, it will be 3 cents or 4 cents.
Well, it depends on the jeans. Well, great. Actually, my next question, really like to ask Anton. How do you think shipping companies are balancing near-term compliance with longer-term fuel? Just taking bets on fuels.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, thanks the organization to inviting Enegas Renewables to this outstanding event. It's my first time, and it's very well organized. In terms of how the ship company could do, I believe they have to move in 3 directions. First of all, take the quick wins of the efficiency and the digital optimization. So that in the end, the target is to reduce the green hydrogen, the gas house emissions, and not to use one or other technology. So that to get in the objective, first thing, go to the easiest to get targets. Second, hydrogen derivatives. We strongly believe that they are going to have a market in the medium and long term, but in the short term, take advantage of existing biofuels that also help to decrease this carbon footprint. For instance, bio-LNG. And then, as Mark has mentioned, which kind of fuels can they start to use first? The one in which the infrastructure is available. The locking and start a new energy vector is a very, I would say, complicated task. If at the same time you need to develop a completely new infrastructure, for instance, like liquid hydrogen, the challenge is even better. So let's start for the things that are easy to get, and then let the technology to evolve in order to see which are the technologies that better suit the customer needs.
Great, thank you. And I think, Jens, we'll move on to another topic. What role do you think that the regulation will play in accelerating adoption, regulation versus customer demand?
Thank you very much for the question, and also thank you very much for being on the panel here. I think clearly customer demand is needed in order to drive something. However, what we are seeing in the market is there is a very limited, so to say, voluntary demand by off-takers. And I'm not expecting that to change, also in particular on the maritime side after the unfortunate decision earlier or towards the end of last year by IMO to postpone a decision on the IMO regulation. I think at the very end, the demand can only be created via clear and harsh regulatory matters. At the very end, the cost for the end customer are not that excessive, as Mark rightly pointed out. However, I have difficulties in seeing that the end customer is really, driving that demand without having a clear regulatory incentive in order to do so. So I think that is clearly what will be driving, and it's unfortunately not the demand, the voluntary demand only.
So you see regulatory demand essentially more as guidelines or laws versus subsidies or taxes. I mean, do you think that a carbon tax is necessary to get this rolling?
I think initially there is a lot of different types of support being needed for projects to be realized. Clearly, the end products are otherwise, in the current market environment, too expensive to utilize and can't compete with other fossil alternatives. So initially, a combination in order to get the thing rolling. But I think what is clearly in the long run important is to have the regulatory framework and to have that, staying in place despite potential economic turmoils, which will clearly we'll all be facing, until the industry is getting matured enough and the costs of the end products are declining.
Interesting. I'd actually love to ask the whole panel a question about the mix of fuels that we actually expect to be used in 2030. I mean, considering all of your different vantage points and all of the different things that you focus on, what do you think we'll be talking about? And I'd like to consider the regulatory pathways, the demand. It's global, so it's different everywhere. But what do you think we'll be working with in terms of the mix for shipping fuel?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, it will probably depend first on each location of the world. As a European, and when I was in Europe, you can rely a lot on regulation, right? To incentivize people, or ETS, to push people to decarbonize, or to push the filling system to be decarbonized. When I was in China, it was very different. It doesn't work with so much subsidies or so much regulation initially, and actually I saw it going much faster. If I take the mobility for trucks or heavy vehicles or buses, in my 4 years in China, I saw it coming much faster than in Europe, because in Europe it was mostly based on some specific pilots, small towns, small ports, and a closed system, where in China they really incentivize people differently in a more competitive manner to bring technology at scale on the market and to survive on the market. So it's a bit counterintuitive that the Chinese ecosystem is more competitive and capitalistic, but it is. And if you look at other parts of the world, sometimes it's even more different. So what we see today, if you're not speaking about shipping fuel, you see big differences of ecosystem. You see places that still use coal, like South Africa or China, but find a way to decarbonize their industry in other ways, right? In the Middle East, that's what most of the countries and the big oil companies are doing. They know hydrocarbons will remain part of the energy of the future somehow. And at the same time, and I think Patrick Pouyanné said that during the opening ceremony, they also bet on renewable powers, nuclear power, like here in the Emirates. So it's very much pragmatic here, agnostic here, and I see the Middle East again leveraging on their industry, big oil companies, to be able to bring to the ships and the ports, you know, some cleaner energy for the future. Now the real problematic we have for shipping fuel is what I mentioned before, is when they go across the world from the US to China to the Middle East to Europe, if they cannot find the same cost and the same type of technology in Rotterdam or on the West Coast or in Shanghai port, it's going to be an issue. And that's going to be probably coming from the shipping large companies. That's what we see today, the Maersk and the CMS CGM, for them to be the one balancing between the different ports of the world, a little bit like airports and planes are trying to do with SAF at the moment. So some companies in South Africa, like Sasol, are pushing on SAF, but you can't do it only in one airport and not the other. So I think for big ports and big shipping lines, that may happen, mostly from container line. So it's not really answering in details your question, because I don't think, as of today, I can answer that question.
In the beginning, you did make it clear that you were agnostic, but I was hoping to turn you to some kind of decision. I'm going to go on Mark, see if Mark has an idea of what the fuel mix will be. Yeah. Just so making a bet here.
Slightly difficult to talk about the future. So I think for nearshore and short sea shipping, we see an uptake on electrical vessels, for sure. Mm-hmm. We still see the old vessels sailing around on the old fuel. But what I do hope is that we'll see quite a lot of vessels that sail, for instance, 10% or 20% of the distance on methanol as a dual fuel ship, that then can declare 20% of the cargo as green transported, and then you have to pay 1 cent extra for your shirt to actually pay for that. So I hope that there will be a slow turn, and I do see LNG is coming for sure, or it's there. And then I think methanol will be the next one, and then hopefully also the first ships on ammonia will be seeing the light. And you know, maybe there's another carrier found of hydrogen by that time. You never know.
Do you see any issue with methanol in terms of biogenic CO2? Sourcing that and the competition between methanol and, say, eSAF? I mean, just cross-sector competition for the same biogenic CO2. Is this something you consider in your projections?
We're hoping that we can use non-biogenic CO2 a bit longer. So if you could use that until 2050, I think you have enough horizon to actually invest. And then let's be honest, if you now capture CO2 from a gas-powered electricity plant here in Abu Dhabi, and you use that to make methanol that you then use in the shipping, you at least saved half of the CO2. Mm-hmm. Which is not as good as saving it all, but it's far better than saving nothing.
Sure.
So make that horizon a bit longer, and there will be room to invest.
Same arguments for co-firing and lots of other applications.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, Takeo-san, what do you think in terms of shipping fuels in the 2030s? I'm shooting now for like a percentage of liquid hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, biofuels.
Okay, so we have to say, depending upon the vessel type and depending upon the trading pattern. And I have to say, liquid hydrogen, no chance at the time of 2030s because difficulty for fuel tank. Engine okay, but the fuel tank difficult. So then we just focus on the methanol and ammonia. So today, many methanol vessels, but they are facing difficulty to secure proper procurement of fuel. So we are waiting for the outcome, like in China, how much they can produce it. So from a maritime point of view, if green methanol is ready, it's better for industries because of easy handling. But this year, ammonia, we have an engine and we have a vessel, and then we have a 2027 or 28 bunkering system is ready. Then once liner company, container carriers, they start to take action for ammonia fuel container carriers, then I assume 2030s, majority will be ammonia. If methanol, still very difficult to secure the procurement. So that is our assumption.
That makes sense. We'll go on as well. Anton.
Okay, we strongly
Defend
believe that
biofuels.
with the shipping industry is going to happen something like with the light vehicles, with the cars. Not a single source or not a single technology is going to solve the decarbonization process. All of the technologies has their own advantage and their own challenge. We have talked about the challenge of the methanol with the scarcity of the biogenic CO2. If we talk about bio-LNG, that is a very easy solution to implement, the quantities of biomethane that a country can produce is limited for the feedstock available. Probably ammonia, we don't have a feedstock challenge, but we have other challenges, like how to handle ammonia in vessels. So we believe that the regulation needs to set up the target, set up the framework, and then let the technology to evolve and to work, and let the customers to decide what is the source that with this fulfilling this target better suit its needs. For us, what is clear, for instance, is that liquid LNG is a very promising energy vector, but more for the medium-long term. I'm coming from I spent the 15 years of my career in the LNG industry, and the gas industry didn't start for the LNG. First, the gas industry was developed, and then LNG, that has more technical challenge, came. We need to first develop the hydrogen industry, and then the liquid hydrogen industry will come later on. In Enegas Renewables, we are developing raw materials for all these solutions. We are developing biomethane projects and hydrogen projects in order to be able to fit the final manufacturers of these fuels to be able to supply different technologies to the market.
Okay. And Jens, how about you?
Yeah, I would describe it with maybe 3 words. I think it will be diverse, it will be transitional, and it needs to be affordable. What do I mean by that? Diverse, I mean, there will not be one single solution. I think what maritime companies will do first is what is most affordable, and hence they will work on efficiency measures. And there is a lot which they can still do in order to reduce CO2 emissions, like wind assist, like hull improvements, etc. And that would potentially lead to efficiency gains of up to 10–15% maybe, combined with traditional fossil fuels. However, there will also be more and more the usage of blend-in fuels from the bio side, more usage of LNG, grey, bio in particular. But I also see room for methanol, bio predominantly, but also upcoming more and more e-methanol in the shipping industry. Yes, there is the issue about scalability due to the CO2 issue. And of course, it's the more costly fuel, and there will be a competition between different sectors from my perspective on e-methanol. But the ships exist already, right? They can be used, they are existing for more than 10 years, so it's easy to apply. And ammonia will also play a role, in particular in deep sea shipping, but a little bit further out. That's how I would see, in particular, the early 2030 years. And in the later 2030 years, I think there will be much more e-fuels and green fuels being applied.
Definitely. Great. Well, actually, we are right on time, which I think is unusual. Just want to say thank you to our wonderful panel. Hope everyone enjoyed it.